Hey guys, tonight we venture into a place where even sunlight seems afraid to tread. You're scrolling through forums late at night, because who needs sleep when the internet is infinite? And then it happens. An unmarked link sits there like a black hole among neon signs, whispering promises of secrets too dangerous for daylight. Your cursor hovers over it, trembling slightly because deep down, you already know, clicking this will change something inside you forever. You probably won't survive this. Not emotionally anyway. But let's be real, that's never stopped you before. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comment below. I always love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your finger presses down and suddenly, the screen flickers as though protesting your decision. It's not just any website. It's the website. The one they talk about in hushed tones, usually followed by nervous laughter meant to mask fear. Historians still argue whether such digital underworlds are tools or traps. But right now, all you care about is what lies beyond this threshold. The landing page looks ordinary enough at first glance. A plain white background with text, so simple it feels mocking. But as your eyes adjust, details begin to emerge. Tiny glitches crawl across the edges of letters, almost imperceptible unless you stare long enough. And oh, don't stare too long. People have reported headaches, dizziness, even full-blown migraines after focusing on those distortions. Quirky fact. Some say these visual anomalies are deliberate, designed to test how badly you want access. Or maybe they're warnings. Either way, you keep reading. What greets you isn't a welcome message. Exactly. More like an invitation wrapped in barbed wire. Words form sentences that shouldn't make sense yet somehow do, painting vivid pictures of shadowy figures moving in sync across cities, countries, continents. There's mention of coordination, so precise it defies logic, or human capability. Is this hyperbole, paranoia, or truth hiding behind layers of disbelief? Then comes the kicker. Serial killers worldwide aren't lone wolves, stalking prey in isolation. They're connected. Not loosely, either. This network thrives on shared knowledge, resources, and goes darker than anything Hollywood dares imagine. One phrase sticks out, burned into your brain like acid etching glass. We are everywhere. Suddenly, every creak in your house sounds louder, closer. Every shadow stretches longer than it should. And yet, despite the chill crawling up your spine, you can't stop. Curiosity has hooked its claws into you, dragging you deeper into waters colder and murkier than you ever thought possible. Because while part of you screams to close the tab and forget this nightmare exists, another part, the reckless, stubborn part, wants answers, needs them. After all, how could anyone walk away from the deadliest secret lurking within the dark web? The screen flickers again, and you lean closer, squinting as if proximity might decode the mystery before you. But no, this isn't just text. It's a puzzle wrapped in paranoia. The message shifts subtly, almost imperceptibly, rearranging itself like smoke curling through cracks. And then it hits you. This site is alive. Not metaphorically either. It reacts to your presence, feeding off your hesitation, your fear. Your phone buzzes on the desk beside you. A notification from an app you don't remember opening. And for a split second, you swear the glow of its screen casts unnatural shadows across the wall. You pick it up without thinking. Because why wouldn't you? Humans are wired to chase distractions when faced with things they can't explain. That's when you notice it. The faintest trace of something glowing under your phone's flashlight mode. Except you didn't turn the flashlight on. Weird flex, right? You tilt the device toward the computer screen, half expecting nothing to happen. But there it is, a string of symbols, tiny and fragmented, shimmering only under UV light emitted by your phone's blacklight feature. Bet you know your phone could do that, huh? This is where the game changes. Those symbols aren't random. They're instructions or maybe warnings. Each character seems to pulse faintly, as though daring you to look away. One of them resembles a spiral. Another looks like a jagged line breaking apart into smaller fragments. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations used similar patterns in their rituals, But let's not kid ourselves. You're not staring at history here. This is now. And whatever these markings mean, they're meant for you. Your heart thuds louder with each passing second, syncing unervingly with the hum of your laptop fan. Funny how technology sounds so much scarier when you're alone in the dark. Speaking of which, did you hear that noise outside? Probably just the wind. Or maybe it's a universe reminding you that curiosity killed more than cats. Still, you stay glued to the screen, decoding what you can. The first symbol translates roughly to listen. Easy enough, except listen to what? Silence fills the room, heavy and suffocating, until you realize it's not silence at all. There's a low-frequency hum beneath everything, vibrating softly against your eardrums. People online call it the hum, a phenomenon reported worldwide by individuals who claim to hear it without explanation. Creepy side note, most of those reports come from areas near unsolved crimes. Coincidence? Sure, let's go with that. Next comes a warning. Do not trust the watchers. Okay, vague but ominous. Who exactly are the watchers? Security cameras? Hackers? Or something worse? Something that doesn't need eyes to see you. You glance over your shoulder anyway, scanning the corners of your room for anything out of place. Nothing moves, yet the weight of unseen gazes presses down harder. Finally, the last piece of the message appears, clearer than the rest. Follow the thread. A map materializes below it, sprawling and chaotic, dotted with red pins marking locations around the globe. Some places you recognize immediately. Cities infamous for brutal murders, others obscure towns barely registering on Google Maps. Yet all share one thing in common. Death. Violent, calculated, inexplicable death. It dawns on you slowly, like ice melting down your spine. This isn't just information. It's bait. Someone or something wants you to dig deeper, to follow the trail they've laid out. Why? To scare you? To recruit you? Or perhaps simply to remind you that some secrets weren't meant to be found. Either way, you're already in too deep. Closing the tab feels impossible now, like tearing yourself away from a car crash you can't unsee. So instead, you zoom in on the map, focusing on the pin closest to home. Because let's face it, running won't help. Not when the darkness has already found you. The map sprawls before you, a digital spiderweb spun with threads too thin to see, but strong enough to ensnare entire cities. Each red pin throbs faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat synchronized across continents. You zoom in on the one nearest to your location, a small town you vaguely recognize from news headlines months ago. A jogger found dead in the woods, her body posed unnaturally against a tree. Authorities called a random act of violence, but now you wonder, was it ever truly random? Or just another knot in this sprawling tapestry of terror? Your cursor hovers over the pin, trembling slightly as if afraid to click. When you finally do, a cascade of details floods the screen, names, dates, and photographs that shouldn't exist outside police files. But here they are, laid bare for anyone brave or foolish. Enough to look. One photo catches your eye, a close-up of the victim's hand, fingers curled tightly around something small and metallic. It takes a moment to register what it is, a charm bracelet, its charms arranged in an odd pattern. Circles, triangles, spirals. Symbols eerily similar to the ones glowing under your phone's UV light earlier. Quirky tidbit. Did you know ancient sailors used knots and ropes not just for practical purposes, but also as coded messages? Some historians believe certain patterns were meant to ward off evil spirits, or summon them. Makes you wonder if these killers are tying their own metaphorical knots, weaving connections through shared rituals older than modern law enforcement could fathom. The next pin leads to a city halfway across the world, yet the parallels are chilling. Another woman, another woodland scene, another bracelet left behind. Except this time, the charms are different, not entirely. The same shapes recur, but their arrangement has shifted, forming a new sequence, like a language evolving or perhaps a code being tested. You glance back at the first image, comparing it side by side with the second. Patterns emerge, subtle and deliberate, linking these deaths in ways no investigator would dare suggest publicly. Suddenly, your screen glitches again, static crackling like distant thunder. For a brief moment, The map vanishes, replaced by a single sentence scrawled in jagged font. Every thread leads to the loom. Before you can process it, the map reappears, unchanged except for one detail. A new pin blinking softly where none had been before. Right in your hometown. You sit back, breath hitching as reality tilts slightly off kilter. This isn't coincidence anymore, it's design. Someone or something is orchestrating these events with precision bordering on omniscience. Historians still argue whether such coordination could stem from human intelligence alone, or if external influences might be involved. External, supernatural, call it what you will. But either way, it feels bigger than humanity's capacity for cruelty. Bigger than anything you've dared imagine until now. And then there's the timing. Why tonight? Why you? These questions gnaw at the edges of your mind, nibbling away at logic until paranoia takes root. Did you stumble upon this site accidentally? Or were you led here? Was the unmarked link a trap set specifically for curious souls like yours? Maybe the algorithm knew exactly who you are, what keeps you up at night, and how far you go to scratch that at your morbid curiosity. Your gaze drifts back to the map, tracing invisible lines between pins, connecting dots that shouldn't align. Cities thousands of miles apart share eerie similarities, not just in methods, but in execution. Victims chosen with surgical precision, left in poses mimicking ancient art forms long forgotten by mainstream culture. Even the weather during each crime matches. Overcast skies, drizzling rain, earth damp enough to hold impressions of footsteps never found. Coincidence? Sure, let's keep telling ourselves that. But here's the kicker. The thing that makes your stomach twist into knots tighter than any sailor's rope. None of these cases made international headlines. They're local tragedies buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and media indifference. Yet someone compiled them all, piecing together fragments most people wouldn't think twice about. Someone saw the bigger picture, while everyone else focused on individual pixels. And now, so do you. Funny how knowledge works, isn't it? The more you learn, the less safe you feel. Every discovery pulls you further into the labyrinth, walls closing and as paths narrow. Closing the laptop seems laughable now. It's not just a device anymore. It's a portal, one you open willingly, despite every warning screaming inside your head. Because deep down, you know, once you start pulling at threads like these, stopping becomes impossible. The loom awaits, patient and hungry, ready to weave you into its deadly design. You can't unsee the map now, its red pins glowing like embers in the dark. But what terrifies you more is how alive it feels, how it seems to anticipate your every move, feeding you fragments of horror tailored just for you. That blinking pin over your hometown, it wasn't there before. You're certain of it. Yet here it sits, throbbing faintly, as though mocking your denial. The algorithm knows you're watching. Worse still, it knows where you live. Your cursor trembles above the new pin, hesitating like a hand hovering over fire. Clicking means committing to answers that might break you, to truths too sharp to hold without cutting yourself. But not clicking. Well, ignorance has never saved anyone, has it? With a deep breath, or maybe a shallow gasp, you press down. The screen flickers again, static crackling louder this time, drowning out even the hum of your laptop fan. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, text begins to crawl across the display. Subject identified. It reads, followed by, correlations established. Your stomach drops because, holy crap, this isn't random data anymore, it's personal. Names flash briefly, blur beyond recognition, but familiar enough to send chills racing through your veins. People you've seen around town, faces from coffee shops or grocery stores, their lives reduce to lines of code scrolling faster than you can read. And then abruptly, the feed stops on one name. Yours. Oh, great. Now you're officially part of the database. Congrats. What's next? A welcome basket filled with cryptic murder clues. You half expect some maniacal AI voice to congratulate you for joining the club nobody asked to be in. Instead, the screen shifts again, revealing something far worse. Predictions. Dates, times, locations. All meticulously calculated based on patterns you didn't even realize existed. Historians still argue whether algorithms can truly predict human behavior, But whoever programmed this clearly doesn't care about academic debates. This thing isn't guessing, it's forecasting. Here's how it works. Every online footprint you've ever left feeds into the system. Search histories, social media posts, GPS pings, even those embarrassing late-night shopping sprees. All of it gets crunched into probabilities, so precise they border on psychic. If you'll be at the park tomorrow afternoon, the algorithm knows. If you'll take a shortcut through that alley on Wednesday night, it knows that too. And somewhere out there, someone or something is using this information to plan crimes with surgical accuracy. Creepy side note. Did you know some serial killers actually studied computer science back in college? True story. Not all of them. Obviously, most are just garden variety monsters, but a few understood early on how technology could amplify their reach. Imagine having access to tools capable of predicting victims' routines down to the minute. No need for stalking or risky reconnaissance when an algorithm does the dirty work for you. Efficiency meets evil, and suddenly, humanity's darkest impulses get an upgrade. The implications hit you like a freight train. Every step you take, every decision you make, contributes to your own profile within this digital abyss. Did you order pizza last Friday? Great. That tells them you prefer staying in. Bookmarked hiking trails online? Perfect. They'll find you outdoors. Even innocuous habits become weapons in the hands of predators who see people less as individuals and more as variables in a grand equation designed solely for chaos. And let's not forget the irony here. You came looking for answers, only to discover you're already part of the problem. Maybe not directly involved yet, but certainly implicated by association. Your curiosity fuels a machine, keeping it fed with fresh data, while simultaneously turning you into its latest subject. Talk about biting the hand that types. Still, morbid fascination keeps you glued to the screen, scrolling through projections that grow increasingly specific. Tomorrow evening, according to the algorithm, you'll visit the library downtown. The timing aligns perfectly with sunset, casting long shadows across empty streets. A perfect hunting ground if someone were inclined toward such activities. Which, judging by the site's ominous tone, someone probably is. Funny thought. Libraries used to symbolize safety, sanctuaries of knowledge shielded from the world's dangers. Now, thanks to this little detour into cyber horror, they feel like potential death traps. Who needs Stephen King novels when real life writes scripts like these? But wait, it gets better. Beneath the predictions lies another layer of analysis, this one focused on vulnerabilities. Weak points in daily routines, moments when defenses drop lowest, like walking home alone after dark or pausing under streetlights to check your phone. Small actions, seemingly harmless, yet ripe opportunity for disaster. Each vulnerability marked with cold precision, accompanied by suggestions on how best to exploit them. Suggestions written in language clinical enough to pass as research papers. If researchers specialize in ruining lives, by now, sweat beads along your forehead, trickling down despite the chill settling deep in your bones. You should close the tab, walk away, forget any of this ever happened. But instead, you keep reading, drawn deeper into the vortex of inevitability spinning faster with each revelation. Because once the algorithm sees you, truly sees you, hiding becomes impossible. Its hunger doesn't stop until it's devoured every shred of privacy you thought you had left. The algorithm's predictions blur together, a kaleidoscope of your life refracted through the lens of impending doom. But as you scroll further, something shifts, subtle at first, like the faintest whisper beneath the roar of static. The screen dims slightly, and the text changes tone, veering away from cold calculations toward history. Old cases, decades-old murders, resurface in stark contrast to the modern crimes you've been tracing. It's as though the system senses your growing unease and decides to twist the knife deeper by showing you just how far back this web stretches. Suddenly, you're staring at black and white photographs of crime scenes that look disturbingly familiar. A woman posed against a tree, her arms arranged in an unnatural embrace. Another victim found in a shallow grave, surrounded by trinkets left behind like grim signatures. These aren't recent headlines. They're relics from another era, pulled from archives long forgotten by everyone except whoever built this monstrous database. Yet the similarities are impossible to ignore. Same poses, same rituals, same eerie attention to detail. Historians still argue whether serial killers evolve their methods over time or if certain patterns endure across generations. Judging by what you see now, evolution might be the wrong word. This feels less like progression and more like repetition, a cycle looping endlessly through blood-soaked centuries. Quirky tidbit. Did you know some ancient cultures believed murderers could reincarnate into new bodies, carrying their dark urges with them into each lifetime? Sounds like bad fan fiction, right? Except here you are, staring at evidence that suggests maybe those myths weren't entirely baseless. Or maybe it's just humans being humans, recycling horrors because originality is hard. Either way, the parallels between past and present make your skin crawl. One case stands out among the rest. A series of murders in the 1920s attributed to someone known only as the Shadow Weaver. Victims were discovered draped in intricate patterns of twine and cloth, their bodies positioned to mimic constellations visible during the nights they died. Authorities dismissed it as the work of lunatic obsessive astrology, but now you wonder, was there more to it? Could this killer have been part of the same network lurking behind the map on your screen? The thought sends shivers rippling down your spine, especially when you notice one particular photo labeled thread markings. Those symbols, the circles, triangles, spirals, are identical to the ones glowing under your phone's UV light earlier. Identical to the charms on the bracelets left at modern crime scenes. Threads tying eras together, stitching the past into the present. Your cursor hovers over the image, trembling again, and for a moment, you swear you hear laughter, not loud or obnoxious, but soft and distant, like echoes carried on wind. Funny how sounds conjure images. Suddenly, you picture a room filled with shadowy figures gathered around a table, passing notes scrawled in invisible ink. Are they collaborators? Mentors? Or simply observers watching humanity's darkest impulses play out across generations? Whoever they are, they seem content to let chaos unfold without interference, as long as it follows their design. But then comes the kicker. Buried within the historical data is a name, just one, scribbled hastily in faded ink across the bottom corner of a police report. Dr. Elias Vorn. According to fragmented records, he was a psychiatrist who specialized in criminal psychology before vanishing without a trace in 1934. Rumors swirled afterward. He'd gone mad, fled the country, or worse, become complicit in the very crimes he studied. No definitive proof ever surfaced, but his disappearance coincided suspiciously with the abrupt end of the Shadow Weaver's killing spree. Coincidence? Probably not. And here's where things get really creepy. The algorithm doesn't stop at archival photos and dusty reports. Instead, it overlays old crime scenes onto modern maps, pinpointing exact locations where victims were found. Some spots remain unchanged, forests still dense, rivers still winding, but others have transformed completely. Fields turned into parking lots, abandoned warehouses replaced by shopping malls. Yet the algorithm insists these places retain their resonance, as though the earth itself remembers the violence committed upon it. People online call this phenomenon geopathic stress, claiming certain areas harbor energies too toxic for human habitation. Scientists dismiss it as pseudoscience. But sitting here, staring at ghostly outlines of death superimposed on your hometown, skepticism feels like a luxury you can no longer afford. You zoom in on one such location, a park near your apartment, and freeze. The overlay shows a body sprawled across a bench, limbs arranged in that same unnatural pose. Except the bench isn't there anymore. It's been replaced by a children's playground. Kids laugh in the background as swings creak softly in the breeze. You check the date stamped beside the image, 1927, nearly a century ago. Still, the resemblance is uncanny, almost taunting, like the algorithm wants you to connect the dots, or perhaps realize you're standing on one. Your heart pounds louder, drowning out the hum of your laptop fan. Every instinct screams to close the tab, shut the lid, throw the damn computer out the window, if necessary. But instead, you keep scrolling, drawn inexorably forward by morbid curiosity and the gnawing suspicion that none of this is accidental. If Dr. Vorn truly existed, and if his disappearance marked the beginning of something larger than himself, Then his legacy lives on in every thread woven into this digital loom. Threads stretching across decades, binding killers to victims, past to present, until the distinction blurs entirely. Because here's the thing about echoes. They don't fade unless someone stops making noise. And judging by the steady drip of data pouring onto your screen, silence isn't an option anymore. Not for you. Not for anyone caught in the algorithm's hungry gaze. The laughter fades, or maybe it never existed at all, but the weight of those echoes lingers, pressing against your chest like a phantom hand. You stare at the name scrawled in faded ink, Dr. Elias Vaughan. It's not just a name anymore, it's a keyhole, and somewhere deep inside, you know the algorithm is daring you to peek through. So you do. Clicking on a file attached to his profile feels reckless, intrusive, but also inevitable, as if refusing would be tantamount to denying gravity or ignoring the pull of tides. And there it is, a list of code names, each one stranger than the last. The Wraith, the Hollow Oracle, the Loom Keeper. These aren't aliases chosen for subtlety. They're declarations, branding iron stamps meant to sear themselves into memory. Historians still argue whether such grandiosity stemmed from narcissism or necessity, but either way, these names serve a purpose beyond mere identification. They're markers, signposts pointing toward roles within whatever twisted hierarchy governs this network. Roles that transcend time, geography, and morality. One name catches your eye immediately, the Weaver, not because it sounds familiar, though it does faintly, but because it's accompanied by an image, a sketch, really crude and smudged as though drawn hastily in pencil. Yet the face staring back at you sends ice flooding through your veins. It's not detailed enough to identify conclusively, but something about the sharp cheekbones, the hollow eyes, feels unsettlingly close to home. Too close, like looking into a cracked mirror where reflections warp and twist until you can't tell who's real and who's imagined. Funny thought. Ever heard of the doppelganger myth? Supposedly seeing your double is bad luck, or worse, a harbinger of death. But here's the kicker. What if your doppelganger isn't human? What if it's something else entirely? Wear your face like a mask while pulling strings you didn't even know existed. Creepy side note. Some fringe theorists claim serial killers are vessels for ancient entities seeking to reclaim dominion over humanity. Sound ridiculous, right? Until you remember that bracelet charm shaped like a spiral. The same spiral etched into the sketch beneath the Weaver's chin. Each codename comes with its own set of attributes, listed clinically as though cataloged by bureaucrats rather than murderers. Methods of operation, preferred tools, geographical ranges, all laid out in language, so detached it reads like a corporate memo. Except no corporation has departments dedicated to ritualistic slaughter or subsections specializing in psychological torture. At least, none you want to work for. Take the Hollow Oracle, for example. According to the notes, this individual operates exclusively during solar eclipses, targeting victims whose lives intersect with astronomical events, birthdays, anniversaries, even mundane calendar dates tied. The celestial movements become triggers for violence. Why? Because patterns matter. Patterns create meaning, and meaning feeds a machine. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe the Hollow Oracle just likes watching stars align before snuffing them out. Then there's the Loom Keeper, described as a facilitator rather than a direct participant. This person doesn't kill, at least not directly, but instead provides resources, coordinates logistics, and ensures every thread stays taut within the larger design. Think of them as the project manager of nightmares, keeping timelines intact and budgets balanced, if budgets could be measured in blood. Their signature touch? Leaving behind fragments of fabric woven into impossible knots. Quirky tidbit. Sailors used to believe certain knots held magical properties, capable of summoning storms or calming seas. Makes you wonder what kind of storm the Loom Keeper hopes to unleash. But it's the Weaver who dominates the file, their actions documented with obsessive precision. Every victim linked to this killer shares 3 traits: proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Odd combination, sure, but consistent enough to suggest intent. Insomnia, specifically, fascinates you, not because it's rare, but because it implies vulnerability. Sleeplessness leaves people exposed, raw, easier to manipulate. Combine that with isolation near bodies of water, and suddenly, the choice of hunting grounds makes horrifying sense. Water amplifies sound, distorts light, and erases footprints faster than sand. Perfect conditions for someone who prefers shadows over spotlights. And then there's a final detail, buried almost casually among other observations. The weaver always leaves behind a single strand of yarn tied into a complex knot, always placed somewhere visible yet easy to overlook. A tree branch, a door handle, sometimes even tucked inside a victim's pocket. No explanation given, no significance noted, just presence, as though reminding whoever finds that threads connect everything, and everyone. Your gaze drifts back to the map, now overlaid with code names scattered like breadcrumbs across continents. Some overlap, others stand alone, but all share one undeniable truth. They're part of something bigger than any single killer could achieve independently. Something orchestrated, coordinated, designed. Which brings you back to Dr. Elias Vorn and his mysterious disappearance nearly a century ago. Was he the weaver, a mentor, or simply another pawn sacrificed to keep the game going? Whatever the answer, one thing becomes painfully clear. This network thrives on mythologies older than modern law enforcement, drawing power from symbols and rituals most civilizations abandoned long ago. And now, thanks to your late-night curiosity, you step squarely into its path. Closing the laptop won't erase what you've seen. Deleting the browser history won't unring this bell. Because once you understand the code, the shadows start following you everywhere. Even when the lights are on, the map blurs slightly as your vision tunnels, narrowing the focus on the strand of yarn left behind at each crime scene. It's not just a calling card. It's a thread connecting victims, killers, and now you. That thought alone sends a fresh wave of nausea rolling through your gut. But it's the silence that truly unnerves you, not the absence of sound, the oppressive kind that presses against eardrums like weighted blankets, but the eerie lack of evidence captured by security cameras near these murders. Or rather, the deliberate erasure of it. You scroll back through case files, cross-referencing timestamps with surveillance logs, and notice something chilling. Every single location had functioning cameras installed. Gas stations, parking garages, even private residences equipped with state-of-the-art systems. All render useless in the hours leading up to each attack. Outages reported as technical glitches or power surges, conveniently timed to blind witnesses both human and mechanical, except not entirely blind, because buried deep within metadata, timestamps too faint for casual observers to notice, are fragments of footage recovered after fact. Fragments showing things no camera should be able to capture. Funny how technology works, isn't it? Designed to protect us, yet capable of revealing horrors we'd rather ignore. Case in point, grainy clips flicker across your screen, looping endlessly despite their brevity. Shadows moving where none should exist. Figures appearing briefly before dissolving into static. And always, the same recurring anomaly, a faint shimmer rippling across surfaces moments before the feed cuts out completely. Scientists still argue whether such distortions result from electromagnetic interference or flaws inherent in digital recording devices. But sitting here, watching shadows dance like specters freed from some forgotten abyss, scientific explanations feel woefully inadequate. One clip catches your attention more than the others. A gas station convenience store late at night, its fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. The cashier leans against the counter, scrolling idly on their phone, while a car pulls up outside. Nothing unusual about that, or so it seems. Then, without warning, the screen glitches violently, pixels rearranging themselves into shapes that shouldn't compute. For a split second, you see it, a figure standing between the pumps, face obscure beneath a hood, holding something long and thin. Yarn? Rope? Impossible to tell, but whatever it is glows faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat synchronized with the static. And then they're gone, just like that. No footsteps, no movement toward the exit. One frame they're there, the next, empty air, except not quite empty. Something lingers in the space they occupied, a haze, almost imperceptible, swirling lazily before vanishing altogether. Creepy side note. Some urban legends claim spirits leave behind residual energy when crossing over into our world. Others suggest certain frequencies can trap entities between dimensions, forcing them to manifest physically under specific conditions. Neither theory explains why your laptop fan suddenly revs louder, as though straining against unseen forces trying to pull it apart. Your cursor hovers over the play button, hesitating. Part of you wants to rewind, dissect every frame until answers emerge. Another part, the smarter, saner part, urges you to close the tab and walk away. But curiosity outweighs caution, as it always does, and soon enough, you're cycling through frames frame by frame, searching for clues hidden in plain sight. That's when you spot it. A reflection, barely visible in the glass doors behind the cashier, distorted but unmistakable. The figure again, only this time facing directly toward the camera. Toward you. It's not looking at the lens. It's looking past it, straight into whatever device you're using to view the footage. Like it knows you're watching. Like it's been waiting for you all along. Your breath catches sharply, fingers freezing mid-click as realization dawns. This is an archive data meant for public consumption. This is live surveillance repurposed as bait, designed to draw you deeper into the labyrinth. Because let's face it, nobody leaves breadcrumbs unless they want someone to follow them. Which begs the question, why you, of all the millions trolling the dark web tonight, why did the algorithm single you out? Did you stumble upon this site accidentally? Or were you chosen deliberately? Was your search history flagged by keywords triggering automated responses? Or did something, decide your curiosity made you worthy of inclusion? Either way, the implications are staggering. If cameras can fail under mysterious circumstances, what else might malfunction when needed most? Phones losing signal, alarms refusing to sound, even simple light switches failing mid-flick. Each scenario plays out vividly in your mind. Scenarios ripped straight from horror movies, except now they feel disturbingly plausible. Quirky tidbit. Ever heard of the Mandela effect? When large groups of people misremember events or details collectively, creating alternate realities that bleed into consensus reality. Some fringe theorists believe such phenomena occur when dimensional barriers weaken temporarily, allowing glimpses of parallel worlds to seep through. Makes you wonder if those shimmering distortions in the footage aren't glitches at all, but windows. Windows into places humans weren't meant to see. But here's the real kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Every victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout the files. Traits linking them inexorably to the Weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Static crackles louder, snapping you out of reverie. On screen, the figure reappears briefly, raising arms though pointing directly at you before fading once more into nothingness. Coincidence? Probably not. Warning? Definitely. Whatever force drives this network doesn't care about subtlety anymore. It wants you scared, wants you watching, wants you knowing exactly how powerless you are against threads already woven tight around your life. Because silent witnesses don't stay silent forever. Eventually they speak, and when they do, nobody listens until it's too late. The static dies down, leaving your screen eerily silent except for the faint hum of your laptop fan. But the image of that figure, arm raised, pointing at you, burns itself into your retinas like an afterimage from staring at the sun too long. You close your eyes, hoping to erase it, but instead, it morphs into something worse. Whispers, soft, disjointed murmurs seeping through cracks in reality, urging you closer to truths better left buried. Except they're not just whispers anymore. They're invitations. You glance back at the map, now dotted with red pins glowing brighter than before. Each one feels heavier somehow, pulsing with a malevolent energy that makes your skin prickle. Historians still argue whether ancient cultures believe certain locations held portals to other realms, or if those beliefs stem purely from fear of the unknown. Either way, this map isn't marking geographical points. It's highlighting gateways. Gateways leading somewhere darker, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous than anything modern society acknowledges. And judging by the footage you just watched, some of those gates aren't fully closed. Funny how language evolves, isn't it? Red rooms used to refer to urban legends about live-streamed horrors hosted on the dark web. Snuff films broadcast in real time for depraved audiences willing to pay top dollar or Bitcoin for front row seats to unspeakable acts. Except here's a twist. These aren't snuff films. Not exactly. Because while traditional red rooms vanish without a trace once discovered, the ones tied to this network leave behind echoes. Residual imprints burned into digital spaces, like scars refusing to heal, clips recovered post-outage, metadata anomalies lingering weeks after deletion, all remnants of performances meant to blur lines between spectator and participant. And then there's the delivery method. No flashy advertisements or clickable links promising forbidden thrills. Instead, access comes wrapped in subtlety, so sharp it cuts without warning. A stray comment on a forum thread. An unmarked email attachment arriving unexpectedly. Or maybe, just maybe, a glitchy surveillance clip embedded within case files designed to lure curious minds deeper into the abyss. Whatever form it takes, the invitation always arrives personalized, as though tailored specifically for you. Your cursor drifts toward one of the red pins closest to home, trembling slightly as it hovers above the blinking icon. Clicking feels reckless, intrusive, yet impossible to resist. So you do. The screen flickers violently again, static crackling louder than ever before, until finally, a new window opens. At first glance, it looks ordinary enough. A blank page filled with text scrolling slowly upward. Words forming sentences that shouldn't make sense yet somehow do, painting vivid pictures of shadowy figures moving in sync across cities, countries, continents. Then comes the kicker. Timestamps accompanying each entry, counting backward from 0. 0 meaning live. 0 meaning now. 0 meaning whatever unfolds next happens in real time, and you're already too late to stop it. Static gives way to sound. Faint breathing amplified unnaturally loud, punctuated by occasional rustles suggesting movement nearby. Movement coming closer with every passing second. Funny thought. Ever wonder why horror movies rely so heavily on audio cues to build tension? Because hearing danger approach triggers primal instincts far older than sight. Instincts screaming at you right now to shut the laptop, turn off the lights, and pretend none of this exists. Except shutting the laptop won't silence the breathing. Turning off the lights won't erase the footsteps growing steadily nearer. And pretending doesn't work when threads connect directly to your life. Quirky tidbit. Did you know some animals perceive time differently than humans? Dogs experience events roughly 7 times faster, which explains why they react to sounds we barely notice. Makes you wonder what else lurks just beyond human perception. Things moving too fast or too slow for us to register consciously. Things like cameras failing inexplicably during murders, only to recover fragments showing shadows dancing where none should exist. Shadows moving faster than physics allows, slower than logic permits. On screen, the text stops scrolling abruptly, replaced by a single phrase glowing faintly against blackness. Welcome to performance. Below it lies another countdown, this one ticking forward rather than back. Starting from 0. 0 meaning beginning. Beginning meaning participation. Participation meaning what exactly? Spectatorship? Complicity? Something else entirely? Suddenly, the feed splits into quadrants, each displaying live footage from different angles. Abandoned warehouses, deserted alleyways, even forest clearings bathed in moonlight. All familiar settings pulled straight from archive crime scenes. Except these aren't recordings. They're happening right now. Figures move silently through frames. Faces obscure beneath hoods or masks shaped like animals long extinct. Deer antlers, wolf jaws, owl feathers, ritualistic costumes blending seamlessly into environments as though worn by creatures born of Earth itself. But here's the thing about performances. They require audiences. Without witnesses, actions lose significance, becoming hollow gestures devoid of impact, which means whoever or whatever is orchestrating the show needs you watching, needs you participating, however passively, to validate their existence, to confirm they're real. And then comes a final detail, the one sending shockwaves rippling through your chest, Among the quadrants of the fifth frame, smaller but unmistakably centered. A webcam feed showing your own face reflected back at you. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, frozen mid-gasp as realization dawns. You're part performance too. Not merely audience, but actor, player, pawn. Because red rooms don't disappear once discovered. They linger, waiting patiently for someone brave or foolish, enough to step inside. And now, thanks to your curiosity, you walk straight into theirs. Your reflection stares back at you from the fifth frame, pale and trembling under the harsh glow of your laptop screen. But it's not just your face anymore. It's a mask, slipping incrementally with each tick of the live countdown. Below the feed, faint green numbers flicker like embers. Cryptocurrency transactions streaming in real time, their values climbing steadily as though fueled by blood rather than code. Payments flowing through blockchain trails too complex for authorities to untangle easily, or so they'd have you believe. Except now, sitting here watching shadows dance across quadrants of horror, untangling feels laughably optimistic. This is an evasion. It's design. Funny how money works, isn't it? Once upon a time, wealth meant physical objects, gold coins, paper bills, even cowrie shells if we're going way back. Now, it's reduced to strings of numbers floating between servers scattered across continents. Convenient, sure, but also terrifying when those same strings fund atrocities no courtroom can prosecute. Historians still argue whether digital currencies represent humanity's greatest innovation or its most dangerous weapon. Judging by what you see now, weapon seems pretty spot on. Each transaction comes tagged with metadata, timestamps, wallet addresses, sometimes even brief notes scrawled hastily in anonymous chat rooms. Notes reading things like for the Weaver or silent witness package. Codes embedded within codes, layers of encryption, masking intent behind false fronts of financial legitimacy. One entry catches your eye immediately, a payment labeled simply coffin. Curious, you click on it. Not because you expect answers, but because curiosity has become less a choice and more compulsion, gnawing at whatever sanity remains. The screen shifts abruptly, static crackling louder before settling into something new. A ledger. Rows upon rows of names listed alongside corresponding payments, all linked to specific events captured within the Red Room feeds. Victims' profiles appear first, followed by killers, then facilitators. Each role assigned a monetary value based on contribution to the overall performance. Insomnia-prone targets cost less than seasoned collaborators, while high-profile participants demand premiums rivaling luxury auction bids. It's capitalism stripped raw, exposing veins pulsing with greed darker than any market crash could predict. Quirky tidbit. Ever heard the phrase blood money? Originally coined to describe profits gained through unethical means, it's taken on literal connotations here. Because let's be honest, calling these transactions mere currency exchanges feels disingenuous, when threads tied directly to lives ended prematurely. Lives valued not in years lived, but dollars exchanged. Makes you wonder if ancient merchants trading salt for slaves experienced similar moral disconnects, or if morality itself evaporated entirely one scale's tip toward profit over principle. But here's where things get really creepy. Some entries include additional details beyond standard metadata. Personalized messages left by senders, cryptic phrases hinting at motivations deeper than simple compensation. One note stands out among the rest. Threads must remain unbroken. Written in plain text beneath a six-figure transfer destined for an address traced back to multiple unsolved cases worldwide. Multiple cases involving water proximity, secluded spaces, insomnia, and always strands of yarn tied into knots too intricate for casual observation. Static crackles again, louder this time, drowning out ambient noise until only the hum of your laptop fan remains audible. On screen, the ledger vanishes momentarily, replaced by another window opening automatically. Inside sits a single image, a coffin draped in fabric woven tightly enough to resemble chainmail. Fabric glowing faintly, pulsing rhythmically as though alive. Or inhabited. Creepy side note. Some cultures believe certain textiles retain energies imprinted during creation, storing memories or intentions embedded intentionally by artisans. Others claim cursed materials amplify negative emotions, twisting them into malevolent forces capable of influencing wearers or viewers. And then comes a kicker. Etched into the coffin's lid lies a spiral identical to the charm bracelet symbols haunting earlier case files. Spirals matching patterns found in recovered surveillance footage, ritualistic arrangements mimicking celestial alignments, even distortions rippling across camera lenses moments before feeds cut out completely, patterns repeating endlessly, connecting dots spanning decades, continents, dimensions unknown, patterns suggesting whatever orchestrates this network doesn't operate within conventional constraints of time or space. Patterns implying something far older and far hungrier than modern law enforcement acknowledges. Your gaze drifts back to the live feeds, quadrants still displaying performances unfolding simultaneously despite geographical distances separating them physically. Figures move silently through frames, action synchronized perfectly despite lack of visible communication. Perfect coordination achievable only through shared knowledge or shared control. Control exerted via invisible threads binding participants together tighter than any blockchain trail could hope to replicate. Threads anchored firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. Because here's the thing about coffins. They don't just contain bodies. They preserve legacies, stories, secrets whispered softly enough to evade detection, yet loud enough to echo indefinitely. Secrets kept safe within confines designed specifically to prevent escape. Unless, of course, escape becomes part of the plan. Which brings us back to payments labeled coffin. Payments funding performances requiring witnesses willing to watch without intervening. Payments ensuring every thread stays taut within larger designs stretching farther than individual lifetimes allow comprehension. Payments reminding everyone involved, including you, that stepping away isn't an option anymore. Not when threads connect directly to wallets holding keys, unlocking doors best left closed forever. Because cryptocurrency coffins don't disappear once discovered. They linger, waiting patiently for someone brave or foolish enough to open them. And now, thanks to your curiosity, you've walked straight into theirs. The image of the glowing coffin fades, but its presence lingers like a phantom ache in your chest. You try to shake it off. Convince yourself it's just another piece of digital horror designed to unsettle. But deep down, you know better. This isn't about fear anymore. It's about selection. Every victim tied to this network wasn't chosen randomly. Their insomnia, their proximity to water, their access to secluded spaces. It's all part of a meticulous process, a curation so precise it borders on artistry. And now, as you stare at the live feeds flickering across your screen, you realize something far worse. Whoever controls these threads knows exactly how to pick them. Your cursor hovers over one of the quadrants, drawn inexplicably to a figure standing motionless near a riverbank. The camera angle shifts slightly, revealing faint details otherwise obscured by shadows. A bracelet dangles loosely from their wrist. One charm shaped unmistakably like a spiral. Same spiral etched into coffin lids. Same spiral glowing under UV light earlier tonight. It's not coincidence. It's branding, marking targets for inclusion, within designs stretching beyond comprehension. Historians still argue whether ancient societies used symbols similarly, embedding meanings too sacred or sinister for casual interpretation. Either way, those spirals aren't decorations, they're invitations. Funny thought. Ever notice how people disappear without warning sometimes? Friends stop responding to texts. Neighbors vanish overnight. Coworkers quit jobs abruptly without explanation. We chalk it up to life being unpredictable. But what if unpredictability is the point? What if disappearances serve purposes beyond individual fates, feeding larger mechanisms requiring constant fuel to function? Creepy side note. Some fringe theorists claim missing persons cases spike cyclically, aligning with lunar phases, or celestial events triggering dormant urges within humanity's collective psyche. Others suggest certain disappearances result from forces outside human control entirely. Forces selecting participants deliberately rather than accidentally. And then there's a delivery method again, subtle yet deliberate. Payments labeled silent witness package. Accompanying profiles flagged for attention. Profiles detailing traits shared universally among victims. Sleeplessness, isolation, vulnerability amplified exponentially by routines leaving little room for deviation. Routines tracked meticulously via online footprints, feeding algorithms, predicting behaviors down to minute. Behaviors exploited ruthlessly once identified correctly. Because let's face it, patterns make hunting easier. Patterns create order out of chaos, allowing predators to anticipate movements before prey even realizes danger exists. Quirky tidbit. Did you know some animals rely solely on instincts when threatened? Fight or flight response is hardwired into DNA, ensure survival despite lack of conscious decision-making. Humans, however, complicate matters with logic, reasoning, denial. All tools rendering us blind to threats lurking closer than expected. Threats wearing faces resembling our own reflected back through screens displaying live performances unfolding simultaneously worldwide. Performances demanding participation, whether acknowledged openly or not. On screen, the figure near the riverbank moves suddenly, stepping closer to the water's edge. Something glints faintly in their hand, a strand of yarn, perhaps, or rope woven tightly enough to resemble chainmail draped across coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, memory, secrecy. Whatever is pulses rhythmically, glowing softly despite darkness swallowing surroundings whole. Static crackles briefly, drowning out ambient noise until only breathing remains audible. Faint, uneven, almost labored. Breathing belonging neither exclusively to performer nor audience, but existing somewhere between both states uncomfortably. Suddenly, realization dawns sharply. Victims don't simply vanish. They're prepared. Prepared carefully, methodically, ensuring every disappearance contributes meaningfully toward larger objectives, transcending individual lives lost prematurely. Objectives hinted at obliquely through notes accompanying payments labeled cryptically yet purposefully. Notes reading things like, "Threads must remain unbroken," or "Patterns require preservation." Codes embedded within codes layered thickly enough to obscure intent behind false fronts of financial legitimacy, while retaining clarity sufficient for initiates understanding languages spoken silently through symbols etched permanently into consciousnesses unwilling or unable to resist influence exerted invisibly. Static gives way to sound again, soft rustling amplified unnaturally loud, punctuated occasionally by splashes suggesting movement occurring directly within water itself. Movement growing steadily nearer despite lack of visible stimuli, prompting action beyond instinctual urges driving figures forward relentlessly regardless consequence faced ultimately. Funny how sounds conjure images vividly when paired alongside visuals distorted intentionally to heighten tension building incrementally toward climaxes inevitable yet unpredictable precisely because uncertainty fuels fascination stronger than certainty ever could hope achieve consistently. But here's the real kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Each victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout case files. Traits linking them inexorably to the weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Because victims who vanish don't leave behind clues accidentally. Clues embedded intentionally within environments designed specifically to preserve echoes resonating indefinitely after disappearances finalized conclusively. Echoes reminding everyone involved, including you, that stepping away isn't an option anymore. Not when threads connect directly to wallets, holding keys, unlocking doors best left closed forever. Because victims who vanish don't stay vanished forever. Eventually they reappear, not physically necessarily, but symbolically. Symbols woven tightly enough to resemble chains binding performers together tighter than any blockchain trail could hope replicate effectively. Chains anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. The breathing grows louder, uneven gasps punctuated by the occasional splash as though the figure near the riverbank is struggling, or perhaps performing for an unseen audience. You can't tell anymore. The line between predator and prey blurs with every passing second, each movement choreographed to perfection despite geographical distances separating participants physically. And yet, they move in sync, as if guided by invisible hands pulling strings too delicate for human comprehension, but strong enough to bind lives together irreversibly. Funny how control works, isn't it? Once upon a time, puppet masters manipulated marionettes using visible wires. Their artistry celebrated openly, without fear of judgment. Now, those same principles apply, but instead of wood and fabric, the puppets are people. People chosen deliberately, prepared meticulously, and positioned precisely where needed most. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations believed certain individuals possessed supernatural abilities to influence others remotely, or if such beliefs stem purely from paranoia fueled by lack of understanding regarding psychological manipulation. Either way, whoever, or whatever, orchestrates this network doesn't rely on superstition alone. They use technology, psychology, and something far darker to ensure compliance. Quirky tidbit. Ever heard of the term string theory outside physics contexts? Some fringe theorists claim threads connecting victims, killers, facilitators, and now you aren't metaphorical at all. Threads exist tangibly, vibrating at frequencies imperceptible to human senses, yet capable of transmitting commands directly into subconscious minds. Makes you wonder if insomnia plaguing targets stems less from medical conditions and more from interference caused by vibrations disrupting natural sleep cycles intentionally. Interference designed to weaken defenses gradually until resistance becomes futile. On screen, the live feed shifts slightly, quadrants rearranging themselves automatically to highlight specific performances unfolding simultaneously worldwide. Figures move silently through frames, actions synchronized perfectly despite absence of visible communication. Perfect coordination achievable only through shared knowledge or shared control. Control exerted via invisible threads, binding participants together tighter than any blockchain trail could hope to replicate effectively. Threads anchored firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. And then comes the kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Each victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout case files. Traits linking them inexorably to the Weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Static crackles again, drowning out ambient noise until only the hum of your laptop fan remains audible. On screen, the ledger reappears momentarily, rows upon rows of names listed alongside corresponding payments, all linked to specific events captured within the Red Room feeds. Victims' profiles appear first, followed by killers, then facilitators. Each role assigned a monetary value based on contribution to the overall performance. Insomnia-prone targets cost less than seasoned collaborators, while high-profile participants demand premiums rivaling luxury auction bids. It's capitalism stripped raw, exposing veins pulsing with greed darker than any market crash could predict. But here's the thing about puppet masters. They don't operate alone. Behind every string lies another hand guiding movements subtly enough to evade detection, yet forcefully enough to guarantee outcomes aligned perfectly with intended designs. Designs stretching beyond individual lifetimes, transcending conventional constraint of time or space entirely. Design suggesting whatever orchestrates this network doesn't adhere strictly to humanity's rules governing morality, legality, reality itself. Creepy side note. Some urban legends claim spirits leave behind residual energy when crossing over into our world. Others suggest certain frequencies can trap entities between dimensions, forcing them to manifest physically under specific conditions. Neither theory explains why your laptop fan suddenly revs louder, as though straining against unseen forces trying to pull it apart. Your gaze drifts back to the map, now overlaid with code names scattered like breadcrumbs across continents. Some overlap, others stand alone, but all share one undeniable truth. They're part of something bigger than any single killer could achieve independently. Something orchestrated, coordinated, designed. Which brings you back to Dr. Elias Vorn and his mysterious disappearance nearly a century ago. Was he the Weaver, a mentor, or simply another pawn sacrificed to keep the game going? Whatever the answer, one thing becomes painfully clear. This network thrives on mythologies older than modern law enforcement, drawing power from symbols and rituals most civilizations abandoned long ago. And now, Thanks to your late-night curiosity, you stepped squarely into its path. Closing the laptop won't erase what you've seen. Deleting the browser history won't unring this bell. Because once you understand the code, the shadows start following you everywhere, even when the lights are on. Because puppet masters don't disappear once discovered. They linger, waiting patiently for someone brave or foolish, enough to follow their strings. And now, thanks to your curiosity, you walk straight into theirs. The map flickers again, its red pins throbbing like veins beneath skin too thin to contain the pressure building inside. Each pulse feels heavier now, more deliberate, as the algorithm knows you're close to unraveling something it doesn't want exposed. But here's the thing about algorithms. They don't just process data, they weaponize it. And right now, you're staring at a digital arsenal loaded with enough personal information to destroy lives in ways no bullet ever could. Your cursor trembles above one of the pins, hovering over a location that feels eerily familiar despite never having visited it before. Clicking brings up a dossier, not unlike the ones you've seen earlier, but this time, the details hit closer to home. Names, addresses, routines, even private conversations scraped from forgotten chat logs or discarded emails. Conversations you thought were safe because they happened years ago, buried under layers of assumed anonymity. Except nothing is truly anonymous anymore, not when threads connect directly to wallets, holding keys, unlocking doors best left closed forever. Funny how privacy works, isn't it? Once upon a time, secret stayed secret because sharing required effort. Writing letters, making phone calls, meeting face-to-face. Now, all it takes is a single click, a stray comment on social media, an unguarded moment captured by cameras we didn't know existed. Historians still argue whether humanity traded freedom for convenience willingly, or convenience simply outpaced comprehension until resistance became impossible. Judging by what you see now, impossible feels like an understatement. Quirky tidbit. Did you know some hackers refer to stolen personal data as digital DNA? Because just like genetic material, information reveals everything about who you are, where you've been, and what makes you vulnerable. Vulnerabilities amplified exponentially once fed into systems designed specifically to exploit weaknesses intentionally rather than accidentally. Weaknesses like insomnia, keeping targets awake long enough to blur lines between paranoia and reality, or proximity to water, ensuring isolation, remains constant regardless environmental changes occurring unpredictably otherwise. On screen, the dossier shifts slightly, revealing fragments of metadata embedded within seemingly innocuous files. Timestamps marking moments when defenses dropped lowest, locations pinpointing exact coordinates where shadows stretch longest, coordinates aligning perfectly with patterns etched permanently into consciousnesses unwilling or unable to resist influence exerted invisibly yet effectively. Influence transforming ordinary people into participants within performances unfolding simultaneously worldwide, without consent necessary, explicitly stated verbally or written formally, anywhere visible, easily accessible publicly. Static crackles louder, drowning out ambient noise until only breathing remains audible. Faint, uneven, almost labored. Breathing belonging neither exclusively to performer nor audience, but existing somewhere between both states, uncomfortably intertwined tightly enough to resemble chains binding individuals together irreversibly regardless consequences faced ultimately unavoidable entirely. Suddenly, realization dawns sharply. Data doesn't kill directly. It enables killing indirectly. Enabling selection processes identifying targets based solely on traits shared universally among victims. Sleeplessness, isolation. Vulnerability amplified exponentially by routines tracked meticulously via online footprints, feeding algorithms predicting behaviors down to the minute. Behaviors exploited ruthlessly once identified correctly. Because let's face it, patterns make hunting easier. Patterns create order out of chaos, allowing predators to anticipate movements before prey even realizes danger exists, lurking closer than expected, initially perceived consciously, rationally, logically, consistently. And then comes a kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Each victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout case files. Traits linking them inexorably to the Weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Creepy side note. Some fringe theorists claim missing persons cases spike cyclically, aligning with lunar phases or celestial events triggering dormant urges within humanity's collective psyche. Others suggest certain disappearances result from forces outside human control entirely. Forces selecting participants deliberately rather than accidentally. Forces using personal information sold on dark web markets becoming weaponized against unsuspecting targets vulnerable due ignorance, complacency, denial, refusal to acknowledge reality, staring straight faces, reflected screens displaying live performances unfolding simultaneously worldwide, demanding participation, acknowledged openly, not necessarily required, explicitly, verbally, formally, anywhere visible, easily accessible publicly. Because here's the thing about data, it doesn't disappear once discovered. It lingers, waiting patiently for someone brave or foolish, enough to misuse it. And now, thanks to your curiosity, you walk straight into a labyrinth built entirely from threads woven tightly enough to resemble chains anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. Static gives way to sound again, soft rustling amplified unnaturally loud, punctuated occasionally by splashes suggesting movement occurring directly within water itself. Movement growing steadily nearer despite lack of visible stimuli, prompting action beyond instinctual urges, driving figures for relentlessly regardless consequence faced, ultimately unavoidable entirely. Because data that kills doesn't stay dormant forever. Eventually it reactivates, not physically necessarily, but symbolically. Symbols woven tightly enough to resemble chains binding performers together tighter than any blockchain trail, could hope replicate effectively. Chains anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. The splashes grow louder, closer, until the sound fills your ears like a heartbeat amplified to deafening levels. You glance back at the live feed, where the figure near the riverbank has stopped moving altogether. They're crouched now, their hooded silhouette frozen in place, as though listening for something or someone. And then it happens. Faint lines begin to appear on the ground around them, glowing softly despite the darkness, swallowing everything else whole. Symbols etched into dirt or mud, perhaps, forming patterns too intricate to dismiss as random markings left by nature or chance. Patterns that look eerily familiar. Funny how symbols work, isn't it? Once upon a time, ancient civilizations relied on them to communicate ideas beyond spoken language, concepts too sacred or sinister for casual interpretation. Now, those same principles apply, but instead of stone tablets or cave walls, these symbols are embedded within environments designed specifically to preserve echoes resonating indefinitely after performances finalized conclusively. Historians still argue whether such patterns represent humanity's attempt to impose order on chaos, or if they stem from forces outside human control entirely. Either way, sitting here watching shadows dance across quadrants, flickering simultaneously worldwide, scientific explanations feel laughably inadequate. Quirky tidbit. Ever heard of the Voynich manuscript? A centuries-old book written in an undecipherable script accompanied by illustrations so bizarre they defy logical categorization. Some claim it's a hoax. Others suggest it contains knowledge meant only for initiates understanding languages spoken silently through symbols etched permanently into consciousnesses unwilling or unable to resist influence exerted invisibly yet effectively. Influence transforming ordinary people into participants within designs stretching farther than individual lifetimes, allow comprehension fully, completely, consistently. On screen, the symbols pulse rhythmically, glowing brighter with each passing second until the entire area surrounding the figure resembles a web spun from light itself. Threads connecting dots spanning decades, continents, dimensions unknown, all tied together tightly enough to resemble chains binding performers together irreversibly regardless consequences faced, ultimately unavoidable entirely. Chains anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. And then comes the kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Each victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout case files. Traits linking them inexorably to the Weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, Memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Static crackles again, drowning out ambient noise until only breathing remains audible. Faint, uneven, almost labored. Breathing belonging neither exclusively to performer nor audience, but existing somewhere between both states, uncomfortably intertwined tightly enough to resemble chains binding individuals together irreversibly regardless consequences faced, ultimately unavoidable entirely. Creepy side note. Some urban legends claim spirits leave behind residual energy when crossing over into our world. Others suggest certain frequencies can trap entities between dimensions, forcing them to manifest physically under specific conditions. Neither theory explains why your laptop fan suddenly revs louder, as though straining against unseen forces trying to pull it apart. Your gaze drifts back to the map, now overlaid with code names scattered like breadcrumbs across continents. Some overlap, others stand alone, but all share one undeniable truth. They're part of something bigger than any single killer could achieve independently. Something orchestrated, coordinated, designed. Which brings you back to Dr. Elias Vorn and his mysterious disappearance nearly a century ago. Was he the Weaver, a mentor, or simply another pawn sacrificed to keep the game going? Whatever the answer, one thing becomes painfully clear. This network thrives on mythologies older than modern law enforcement, drawing power from symbols and rituals most civilizations abandoned long ago. And now, thanks to your late-night curiosity, you step squarely into its path. Closing the laptop won't erase what you've seen. Deleting the browser history won't unring this bell. Because once you understand the code, the shadows start following you everywhere, even when the lights are on. Because languages of fear don't disappear once discovered. They linger, waiting patiently for someone brave or foolish enough to decode them. And now, thanks to your curiosity, you've walked straight into theirs. The symbols on the ground pulse faster now, their glow intensifying until it feels like they're burning themselves into your retinas. You blink, but the afterimages linger, branded onto your vision even when you close your eyes. It's not just light, it's intent. Each line, each curve, seems to hum with a frequency that vibrates through your skull, making your teeth ache and your thoughts blur at the edges. And then, as if sensing your growing unease, the screen glitches violently again. Static crackles louder than ever before, drowning out even the rhythmic splashes from the live feed. For a moment, everything goes black. When the display flickers back to life, the map has changed. The red pins are no longer scattered randomly. They're converging towards you. Your location blinks insistently in the center of the screen, surrounded by pulsing circles that ripple outward like shockwaves. Funny how technology can make you feel so seen and so hunted all at once. Historians still argue whether geolocation tracking is a tool for convenience or surveillance, but right now, you don't care about academic debates. All you know is that someone or something knows exactly where you are. Quirky tidbit. Did you know some animals can sense magnetic fields? Birds use them to navigate during migrations, while certain fish detect subtle shifts in polarity to avoid predators. Makes you wonder if humans might have had similar abilities once, buried deep within instincts we've since ignored, or if these symbols glowing around the figure near the riverbank are doing more than marking territory. Maybe they're tuning forks, resonating at frequencies meant to attract attention from forces far older than humanity itself. On screen, a new window opens automatically, overlaying the map. It's a message, stark white text against a black background. You've been watching long enough. The words hang there for a beat, simple yet suffocating, before another line appears below it. Now it's your turn. Your stomach drops, and suddenly, every hair on your body stands on end. This isn't a warning. It's an invitation. Or maybe a dare. Either way, the implication is clear. You're no longer just an observer. You're part of the design. Static crackles again, louder this time, and the webcam feed reactivates without permission. There you are, reflected back at yourself, wide-eyed and pale, trembling slightly as though your reflection knows something you don't, except something's off. The angle doesn't match your laptop's built-in camera. It's higher, wider, as if mounted on the wall behind you. Creepy side note. Some fringe theorists claim hackers can hijack external devices connected to your network, turning smart home cameras or even baby monitors into tools for spying. But you don't own any of those. So where is this feed coming from? Suddenly, movement catches your eye. Not yours, but something else. A shadow flits across the edge of the frame, too fast to identify clearly but unmistakably present. Then another, and another. They dart in and out of view, fleeting glimpses of figures wearing hoods or masks shaped like animals long extinct. Deer antlers, wolf jaws, owl feathers, ritualistic costumes blending seamlessly into environments as though worn by creatures born of Earth itself. Figures moving silently toward you, step by synchronized step. Breathing becomes difficult now. Shallow gasps punctuated by the occasional hitch as panic claws its way up your throat. You glance over your shoulder, scanning the corners of your room for anything out of place. Nothing moves, yet the weight of unseen gazes presses down harder. Because here's the thing about paranoia. It doesn't need evidence to take root. It feeds on possibility, blooming into certainty until reality tilts slightly off-kilter. Static gives way to sound again. Soft rustling amplified unnaturally loud, punctuated occasionally by faint whispers seeping through cracks in reality. Whispers speaking directly to you, urging you closer to truths better left buried, urging you to run, to hide, to fight, to surrender. Voices overlapping, contradicting, demanding compliance regardless of form taken, ultimately unavoidable entirely. And then comes the kicker. Amidst all this chaos, one constant remains unchanged. Each victim shares proximity to water, access to secluded spaces, and a history of insomnia. Traits highlighted repeatedly throughout case files. Traits linking them inexorably to the Weaver's design. Traits mirrored uncomfortably close to home. Suddenly, memories flood back unbidden. Sleepless nights spent pacing floorboards, staring out windows overlooking the riverbank behind your apartment. How often have you stood there, lost in thought, unaware of how exposed you truly were? Because here's the real horror. You've been marked. Not metaphorically, either. Somewhere along the way, your curiosity crossed a threshold, transforming you from passive witness to active participant. Threads connect directly to wallets, holding keys, unlocking doors best left closed forever. Doors leading somewhere darker, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous than anything modern society acknowledges openly, formally, publicly, easily accessible, conveniently nearby, threateningly imminent, inevitably unavoidable entirely. Funny thought. Ever notice how running never works in horror movies? Characters sprint through forests, down alleyways, across rooftops, but no matter how fast they go, danger always catches up eventually. Makes you wonder if escape attempts serve purposes beyond survival sometimes. Purposes requiring participation, acknowledged openly, not necessarily required explicitly, verbally, formally, anywhere visible, easily accessible, publicly, consistently, universally, permanently, indefinitely, eternally. Because your turn to run doesn't mean freedom lies ahead. It means threads tighten faster when pulled deliberately, intentionally, ruthlessly, mercilessly, relentlessly, unforgivingly, cruelly, inevitably, unavoidably, entirely. The whispers grow louder now, overlapping into a cacophony that feels less like voices and more like pressure building behind your eyes. You can't tell where they're coming from, your laptop, the walls, the air itself, but they're everywhere, pressing in on you until breathing becomes an act of defiance. Run. They hiss, hide, and then, softer but somehow more insidious, stay. The contradiction is maddening, paralyzing, as if the choice isn't yours to make at all. Because deep down you already know, running won't save you. Not this time. Your gaze flickers back to the webcam feed, still displaying shadows moving closer with every passing second. They're in your room now, or at least they seem to be. Figures gliding silently along the edges of the frame, their movements synchronized perfectly despite lack of visible communication. Perfect coordination achievable only through shared knowledge or shared control. Control exerted via invisible threads binding participants together tighter than any blockchain trail could hope to replicate effectively. Threads anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. Funny how decisions work, isn't it? Once upon a time, choices felt infinite. Paths branching endlessly toward futures shaped entirely by free will. Now, those same principles apply, but instead of roads diverging in yellow woods, options narrow sharply until only two remain: escape or embrace. Escape means fleeing blindly into darkness, hoping distance might sever ties too delicate for human comprehension, yet strong enough to bind lives together irreversibly. Embrace means surrendering fully, allowing patterns etched permanently into consciousnesses unwilling or unable to resist influence exerted invisibly yet effectively transform ordinary people into participants within designs stretching farther than individual lifetimes. Allow comprehension fully, completely, consistently. Quirky tidbit. Ever heard of the phrase fight or flight? Biologically speaking, it refers to instinctual responses triggered when faced with perceived threats. Fight prepares muscles for confrontation. Flight readies legs for retreat. Except here's the twist. Neither option guarantees survival when danger operates outside conventional constraints of morality, legality, reality itself. Danger wearing faces resembling our own reflected back through screens displaying live performances, unfolding simultaneously worldwide, demanding participation, acknowledged, openly not necessarily required, explicitly, verbally, formally, anywhere visible, easily accessible publicly, consistently, universally, permanently, indefinitely, eternally. Static crackles again, drowning out ambient noise until only breathing remains audible, faint, uneven, almost labored. Breathing belonging neither exclusively to performer nor audience, but existing somewhere between both states, uncomfortably intertwined tightly enough to resemble chains binding individuals together irreversibly regardless consequences faced, ultimately unavoidable entirely. Suddenly, footsteps echo outside your door. Real ones this time, heavy and deliberate. Each step reverberating through the thin walls of your apartment, like thunder rolling across an empty sky. Funny how sounds conjure images vividly when paired alongside visuals distorted intentionally to heighten tension, building incrementally toward climaxes inevitable yet unpredictable precisely because uncertainty fuels fascination stronger than certainty ever could hope achieve consistently. Climaxes culminating inevitably, unavoidably, entirely. You freeze, heart pounding so loudly you swear whoever or whatever is out there must hear it too. Every instinct screams to move, to grab your phone, barricade the door, climb out the window, but your body refuses to obey. Paralysis grips you like frost settling over glass, cold and unyielding. Because here's the thing about fear, it doesn't just immobilize physically. It erodes resolve mentally until resistance feels futile. Futile because threads connect directly to wallets holding keys, unlocking doors best left closed forever. Doors leading somewhere darker, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous than anything modern society acknowledges, openly, formally, publicly, easily accessible, conveniently nearby, threateningly imminent, inevitably unavoidable entirely. And then comes a final detail. The one sending shockwaves rippling through your chest. Among the quadrants sits a fifth frame, smaller but unmistakably centered. A webcam feed showing your own face reflected back at you. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, frozen mid-gasp as realization dawns. You're part performance too. Not merely audience, but actor, player, pawn. Because escape or embrace aren't mutually exclusive choices anymore. They're facets of the same design. Threads woven tightly enough to resemble chains anchoring firmly within coffins buried deep beneath layers of earth, water, memory. The screen flickers one last time before going dark, leaving you bathed in silence, so profound it feels almost sacred. Shadows stretch longer now, softened by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through your curtains. The footsteps outside have stopped, or perhaps they never existed at all. Either way, the tension begins to ease, inch by inch, like tides retreating after a storm. It's strange how quickly fear fades once adrenaline subsides, melting away like frost under sunlight. What remains is something quieter, gentler, a lingering unease tempered by the comforting hum of mundane reality reasserting itself. You glance around your room, half-expectancy figures lurking in the corners, but nothing moves except the soft sway of fabric stirred by unseen drafts. Breathing slows, steadying into a rhythm that matches the quiet ticking of a clock somewhere in the distance. Your laptop sits closed on the desk, its fan whirring softly as though whispering reassurances rather than warnings. Outside, the world continues uninterrupted. Cars passing, leaves rustling, life carrying on oblivious to the chaos swirling briefly within these four walls. Perhaps none of it was real. Perhaps curiosity simply got the better of you, weaving nightmares from fragments of overactive imagination amplified by late-night solitude. Or perhaps some doors are better left unopened, some threads better left unpulled, some secrets better left buried. Now, let the darkness settle gently around you, a soft cocoon shielding you from thoughts too sharp to hold without cutting yourself. Let the hum of the fan lull you toward rest, its steady rhythm a reminder that safety lies not in answers, but in acceptance. Acceptance that some mysteries exist beyond comprehension, and that peace often resides in choosing not to seek them. Good night. Sleep well, and remember, sometimes ignorance truly is bliss.